Hey, how's everybody doing? Hello, welcome to Soapbox Slam, where I get on my soapbox and talk about the things that I see going on. And today is more of a movie box, where I'm going to give my brief comments on a movie I just recently watched. Now, the movie was released. I've seen it before, and I didn't really pay attention before. I kind of got lost in whatever was going on in my life. I just didn't really give the movie credence. So I came back. I'm looking for something to watch over the weekend, and I decided to watch this film called Babel. Babel was directed and written by Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu and Guillermo Arriaga. It starred, the two main stars in Babel were Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett. We all know Brad Pitt. I mean, stellar looking man. He plays these roles, great roles, of, the strong white protector male. And he does a wonderful job of it. Brad Pitt is quite dreamy, right? Certainly supersedes the Tom Cruise notion, or the Tom Cruise standard of beauty. It certainly is Brad Pitt, and I would agree with that. I mean, Brad Pitt is a wonderful looking man. It also stars Cate Blanchett. Again, I personally think Cate Blanchett is a beautiful waspy white woman. She is British, I believe, or British or Australian. But Australians are Brits too. Don't tell them that, but when you desimplify everything, it's what they are. Or when you simplify or decomplicate everything and simplify everything, that's what they are. But nonetheless, I've always found her to be an extremely beautiful woman. If you are attracted to that dainty, lily white, waspy type woman, I think she is the absolute epitome of that. And that's not all I'm attracted to. I just find beauty in all cultures and all hues of colors, and particularly in that hue of color, I find her to be exceptionally attractive. Like Cate Blanchett, all right, woman. I like her vibe. I like her style. I only hope that she has a loving personality to match all the other parts of her that I find to be so attractive. I mean, she could be an amazingly attractive woman and just be a horrible personality. That I don't know. But it stars Cate Blanchett. The movie Babel won 7 nominations back in 2006. That's when the movie was released, in 2006. It received 7 nominations, and it's what they consider or deem a network narrative, right? So a network narrative basically suggests that all the characters, and there were many characters in this film, all of the characters are connected and have equal weight and importance in the film. It also reveals how they call it network narrative. You can also say 6 degrees of separation, where where one event that occurs on one side of the world, or something that you do on this side of the world, has a traumatic effect, or not a traumatic, it doesn't have to be a traumatic, but has an effect on something on the other side of the world that you have no idea about, right? This 6 degrees of separation, that we are all connected. It's where they get the term network narrative. That we are all interconnected, especially as we continue to be this globalized society, right? And so that's what this film is. It's a film that's deemed a network narrative, or 6 degrees of separation. We are all connected, right? There's not a lot of dialogue in it. There is dialogue, but it's not a whole lot of dialogue. So there's a lot of visual effect that occurs, and visual stimulation that occurs. I would say, all in all, this film is actually a good film. It's great use of visual imagery, visual effect. Minimal dialogue, but the dialogue is important that is used. It's actually very important dialogue. It's not filler dialogue. And I think things that make for a really good film, this film Babel really hits that. I mean, you're talking visual effect, you're talking dialogue, you're talking subject matter, you're talking character arcs. These types of things invoke some sort of emotional response, right? Whether it's fear, anger, or sadness or happiness, right? Great films tap into these things to invoke that kind of response. It's great artistry in itself, and this film is an example of great artistry, right? Certainly a film that is worth watching. Babel. Having said that, it is extremely, for me, let me just say, this is my statement about the film. I'll talk about a little bit about each of the characters and some of the things that go on, and why I'm making the statement that I'm making. Babel can be interpreted as a social conscious movie, right? With many layers of complex relationships among human beings, right? I mean, this is how we can define this movie, and that's my words. I'm not quoting anybody or anything else. That's how I see the film. It is a socially conscious movie with many layers of complex relationships among human beings. I was very, very, very defensive and annoyed watching this film, because I'm very sensitive to ignorant behaviors of human beings. For whatever reason, it hurts my soul. It hurts my heart. And I think a lot of, which is why I think some of the dialogue and the direction, which is why it was nominated for Best Director, some of these little nuanced things that I can respond to visually and emotional response. We have there is such a thing as called emotional intelligence, and I have a very sensitive emotional response to things. And as I watched this film, like I said, I was very defensive and annoyed. And when you take a step back and you just recognize what the emotions are, what is annoying you, and what you're defensive to, that's when you can make an analysis about, oh, okay, this was a good film or this wasn't a good film. One of the great television shows of all time is that Archie Bunker show, All in the Family, right? I mean, this was the most bigoted white man that you could ever imagine. I remember as a child or a teenager trying to watch that show, All in the Family, and just being repulsed. Absolutely repulsed. I was just dumbfounded. How could network television ever put something on like this, right? I didn't have the mental capacity and mental sophistication to deduce or to understand its aim to be satirical, right? And as I got older and started watching it, I was as less defensive and less annoyed by what I was watching, because I understood better what the attempt was in the show. And likewise, films do the same thing and things like that. So part of the reason why I find this film to be a really good film is it invoked that kind of feeling in me, again, similar to the kind of feeling that one might get watching All in the Family with Archie Bunker. I was very defensive and I was very annoyed watching this film. Okay, so let me go into some of the main characters and the main plots that are all interwoven, right? And then point out some of the things that I was defensive to, and then present to you, again, it's called Babel, and challenge you to watch it and see if you notice some of the same things that I've noticed, and how it invoked your emotions. Like I said, it's a social conscious movie. How you interpret the social consciousness and what you walk away with, that's up to you, but I think it makes you aware. The biggest awareness, that being that we are all interconnected, 6 degrees of separation, right? We are all interconnected, and our effects and what we do here truly does affect something where we may not even see. And that's important if you are going to have compassion for your fellow human being and live in a better state. Live in what I believe human beings ought to evolve to, is a bigger state where we're no longer humans just being, but there's some sort of appreciation and value for our interconnectedness, and evolve to something better, evolve to something like humanitarians or something like that, a bigger purpose for us, because human beings are just too damn selfish and need to give up selfishness and mentally evolve to something bigger. And shows like this, where you have 6 degrees of separation among us all, really shed light on, that's why I say social conscious, really shed light on our interconnectedness. I am talking fast because I do want to get through this, and and time constraints and everything else, I have a tendency to ramble and babble, but that's why I'm talking fast. Usually I don't like to talk that fast, but I am trying to get through this. So Babel, and it's an interesting title, by Babel, right? Because in the grand scheme of thing, in the grand scheme of social interconnectiveness and networking and the network narrative and everything else, the grand scheme of it, the larger picture, whether we speak this language, that language, or whatever else, we're all just babbling, right? It's all just babble. It's all just talk, right? It's just blah, 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 want, right? And it'll always be babble and want, and blah, 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 until we do get to the point where we as human beings are something better than humans just being, but rather something bigger, something more evolved in our nature, which I believe has more to do with us respecting, loving, and caring for fellow man or fellow human existence. So anyways, let's get into the plot, right? You have a working class Mexican, and here's where everybody's connected, right? You have a working class Mexican family or Mexican woman. She works for Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett. Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett are going on a tour. They're going to tour or vacation and tour a North African country, Morocco. I've actually been to Morocco, Tangier, Casablanca, these kind of places in Morocco. I've been there. I know. I've seen it. I know it. I've been to Morocco. I know what Morocco looks like. I know what's going on there. I've seen what's going on there. I'm sure things have progressed since I went there in 1994. But nonetheless, I've been to Morocco. I know the area that they're going to go tour, right? Great leathering in Morocco. That's kind of what they're known for. Leathering and rug tapestries, right? Like, that was one of the number one things. Morocco is just south of Spain, across the Mediterranean and the Rock of Gibraltar. The tip of North Africa, the tip of Africa, and the tip of Europe right there, and separated by the body of water of the Mediterranean. That's where Morocco is, right? So the Mexican lady works for a white family in the United States. She's a Mexican. She crosses the border back and forth. She's the nanny to Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett's 2 children, a boy and a girl. Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt are going on a vacation tour to Morocco. They're going to go look at the Moroccan people, right? They're going to go see the countryside of Morocco and look at what the Moroccan people do, these Muslim Moroccan people, and what they do. Mind you, it's Morocco. It's not Afghanistan. Afghanistan and Morocco are very far from each other, and Iraq and Iran are very far from Morocco. Morocco is on the tip of Africa, far. If you're looking at the continent, I mean, it would be the west coast of Africa. It would be the far west, northwest coast, just underneath the Rock of Gibraltar in Spain and Portugal, just underneath that area, separated by a very narrow body of water that separates the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. The Straits of Gibraltar, very thin area that you sail through and everything else. I mean, when I went over there, I took a ferry from Spain to Morocco. And I think the ferry ride was less than 30 minutes, right? So this is where we're talking about, right? So Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt take a trip to Morocco, and in Morocco now, so that's that. There's another story that is woven into this, and where Morocco is kind of so Morocco and Mexico are kind of the catalyst to what's going on in Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt's life. So I mentioned the Mexican family that is actually working for Cate Blanchett and the nanny to Cate Blanchett's children. In Afghanistan. In Morocco, a Japanese man travels to Morocco to do some hunting out there, and this Japanese man meets a Moroccan, and the Moroccan is his hunting tour guide. And in return of being such a great hunting guide, this Japanese man gives the Moroccan man a rifle, a gun. Okay. The Japanese family, the Japanese man, his wife commits suicide, blows her own head off with a gun, and he has a daughter who is deaf. And it's an interesting story about the Japanese man. He's obviously very wealthy. He lives in the penthouse in Japan. And his daughter, so here's all the stories, and we're really going to get into it, right? His daughter is deaf, right? And as a deaf girl, she didn't have to be Japanese. I'm sure all deaf people feel this way, and you don't have to be deaf to feel this way. But this Japanese deaf girl, the daughter of the man who gave the gun to the Afghanistani person, I mean, Afghanistan, the Moroccan person, and we'll get to that story. But this man, this Japanese man and his family has human issues in today's society, very human issues, and human issues that I think that human beings suffer from. Again, I believe in a higher evolution, and that we need to strive for, and it's bigger than just being human beings. And right now we are human beings, and so all the things that we see in our social network today, whether you're in Afghanistan, whether you're in Morocco, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Japan, whether you're in Mexico, or whether you're in the United States, wherever you are, our interconnectedness of human beings existing, our human existence, our human expression is all the same no matter what. You can speak whatever language, you could babble whatever you want. The human expression and the human existence and the human feelings as human beings as we are today all feel the same thing. So it doesn't matter if you're Japanese or whatever you are, you're going to have these emotions if this is something that affects you. Anyways, the Japanese man has a daughter. The daughter is deaf, and her mother has committed suicide, and the daughter is a teenager, and she's dealing with serious emotions about feeling desired, being desired, wanting to being desired, struggling with her deafness, and seeing how difficult it is to communicate, babble, when you're deaf. And this is emotionally striking to her. I shedded tears for this lady, not because no special empathy because she's Japanese. I don't care that she's Japanese. The human experience that she was going through, of wanting to be desired. I mean, literally, this girl, little teenage girl, is throwing herself at every man that she can see, almost like a geisha slut, because she has this need to be needed and this need to be desired, to not be rejected. I mean, we all, I know some of the emotional distraught that I went through after recently being rejected by somebody that I wanted in my life more than anything else in the world, right? It's aching, it's heart aching, it's crushing. This feeling of rejection and hurt and anguish and all that other stuff, right? Add the element of her deafness, and you could really feel this girl's desire and need to feel wanted and not be rejected and desired and loved. Even though she may have been loved, she needed more. An interesting note I will throw out there: Japan has one of the highest suicide rates, and I believe it was Michel Foucault or one of these great theorists. I can't remember. I might be misquoting, and maybe it wasn't Michel Foucault. Emile Durkheim, I think it was Emile Durkheim, wrote an entire dissertation about suicide, and Japan has one of the highest suicides in the world. I think it's number 2 behind Finland. And one of the things that's most interesting about that is when you have societies that are completely homogenous, everybody's the exact same, and you're expected to do exactly what you're expected to do. If we all lived the exact same way that Candace Owen and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson expect us to live, we would probably have an extremely high suicide rate, because the judgment would be so hard when we didn't live up to it. The judgment would be so hard if we had ailments that prevented us from being in society. This is a part of the reason why the Romans back in the day would execute their dwarfs and mutant children and things like that. If they were not cream of the crop, they just executed them. Well, we don't do that in our societies today. Some societies may still do that, but we don't do that in Western civilization and the United States. And because we don't do that, what we also don't do, and I blame this and I put this on the foot of people like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owen, and Tucker Carlson, is when you have things like this in our society, manifestations of human existence, and you do not almost coddle it, these differences, if you don't coddle it, if you don't nurture it, right? This is nature's manifestation. If you don't nurture this, then you create so much rejection and lack of self-worth and destroy self-esteem that it is detrimental. And this particular deaf girl in Japanese society was feeling completely rejected and just desperate for attention and feeling loved. And my heart really, I felt that part as far as the direction that this film put out there in the human existence. I really felt compassion for this girl, this deaf girl, and the attention that she needed what she really needed. So that's one element. And again, it's an element about human existence that we need to pay attention to and nurture our human existence because of certain things in nature. The Mexican woman who's the parent is the nanny to Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett. She's watching the kids. They're out of town, and she takes the kids across the border to Mexico to a wedding because Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt are lollygaggy, irresponsible. And I say lollygaggy, irresponsible because I find a lot of affluent people, particularly white, because there are a lot more white affluent people than other people in this country. They lollygag around the world and have all these nannies and aren't 100%. They love them. I'm not challenging whether they love their kids or not. That's not the statement I'm making here. But they live in such a way that they are not as responsible as they should be. They can literally afford to get rid of some of their responsibilities. And one of the things that they afforded was getting rid of their responsibility to this Mexican woman. And this Mexican, they were supposed to be back at a certain date. They didn't go back by that certain date. And the Mexican woman had already plans to go to a wedding. And so she was stuck with the kids. And so this Mexican woman takes these kids across the border to this Mexican wedding. The wedding goes off, but there's some cultural differences. You see the cultural differences in a Mexican family and the poverty that the Mexican community and family is. I mean, what you do see is there's nothing but love there. I mean, these are people who love each other, period. We all love our families. We all love each other, right? But these white kids who are these hoity-toity, high-to-do, rich white kids are being brought down basically into low-class poor people, and witnessing what they do. Right, they're witnessing their culture firsthand. I mean, talk about a fish out of water, right? So this Mexican woman, because these irresponsible white affluent Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt decide to extend their trip, don't make it back in time. So now this Mexican woman is decides, instead of not going to the wedding, she decides she's going to bring these white kids like a fish out of water down into this Mexican wedding. And a lot goes on at the wedding. Again, a fish out of water. These kids are witnessing a totally different culture and everything else. And the most interesting thing about that is when they try to come back into the United States. As you can imagine, all of the troubles and what could possibly go on when you are coming from Mexico, entering back into the United States. And then we've got the Moroccan family, right? Again, the connection is Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt are vacationing in Morocco, and this Moroccan family, now Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt have no connection to the Moroccan family, that the main characters of the family. The connection of all of these interconnection is the Japanese man who went hunting in Morocco and gave his rifle to this Moroccan family, right? Now, there are a lot of things that we can talk about, like as far as that is concerned, but you took a very, a hunter and everything else, and he has a rifle, and he gives this rifle to untrained people, Moroccan people. He gives this rifle to untrained people, to kids, literally, in a foreign country. So you have taken your Japanese values and American values of gun ownership and hunting and everything else, and you've passed that responsibility on to people who are not familiar with that kind of stuff, don't have the responsibility to use that kind of stuff, and you just handed them a weapon. So that's the connection, the Japanese family to the Afghanistani family. The father of this Afghanistani family buys this or accepts this because he's a goat herder, and he is trying to, fight off jackal and hyena and all this other stuff that is attacking his flock, his herd, right? He has two boys. The dad works hard and everything else. He has two boys. He leaves the gun at home, and the two boys find the gun, and guess what? They're doing what little boys are going to do when they see a gun. They're going to play with the gun, right? They're playing with the gun. The gun that this Japanese man, this very powerful weapon that this Japanese man bestowed onto a less sophisticated society, two little boys. The little boy is an excellent shot. One of the little boys, I mean, he's on point, spot on, right? This little Moroccan boy. Unfortunately, the little boy was playing with the gun, and he shoots. And when he shoots, he accidentally, and it's a big accident, it's a total big misunderstanding, an accident. He shoots and he hits Cate Blanchett in the shoulder, probably nicking one of the arteries right in her hand, and her upper shoulder by the clavicle. Shoots her and hits her right there, while this tour bus of nothing but white people are touring, looking at all the, I put in quotes, zoo inhabitants, right? They're studying all the Moroccan people, right? And it's bizarre because these white people do this all over, not just white people, but very affluent people find it fascinating to go invade other people in their environment and look at them like they're, you know, in a zoo looking at people. And that's how I see what they did, what Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt, they went to the zoo by going to the Morocco and seeing how the Moroccan people live. Well, they're so irate about, you know, the shock and fear because of this gunshot. They label it terrorism. They say that they were being shot at by terrorists. All these white people on the bus. Oh, the terrorists are going to get us. It's terrorists. It's terrorists. No other explanation as to why a bullet would have gotten to them. It had to be terrorists. Mind you, Morocco is on the northwest coast of Africa, nowhere near the Middle East. Nowhere near it. The Moroccans are nowhere near Afghanistan, way nowhere. I mean, Morocco's in North Africa, on the coast, and Afghanistan is in Eurasia, between Asia, Russia, and Asia and India, right? I mean, way on other sides of the world. And then Iraq and Iran are in the Middle East, again, miles, eons between Morocco and that. But yet all these white people, British and everything else, all of a sudden it's terrorists in Morocco, just because Morocco is a North African and dominated by Arabic-speaking people who were once underneath the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman, Persians, Samaritan empires, right? So all of a sudden now they are blanketed all as terrorists. And, you know, Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett are getting on the phone and they're calling the embassy and they're saying it's terrorist and they need an emergency helivac to get out and all this other stuff, right? Creating all of this hysteria because their entitled asses are traveling, looking in the zoo and other places, foreign lands that they have no place in being, and certainly not with their expectations of their Western culture's expecting places where they're going to have the same standards that they have in Western civilization. The hypocrisy and arrogancy of these people, the Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt. Now, mind you, I am completely sympathetic. I mean, you're losing your wife and everything else, but I'm not sympathetic because of your attitude. You're entitled. This is what opportunity and privilege, when people talk about your white privilege and everything else, this is the epitome of that. It is truly the epitome of that. How dare you? All you people who are on that tour bus, you, Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett, how dare you go into all these areas? And this is a character in a movie, but it's emblematic and representative of a lot of white people who go into not even Western cultures, but to try and go into Africa, try and go into South America, Central America, North Africa, all these areas, Asia. How dare you? How dare you go to these places and place your standards and have your anger and pious attitude about ways things ought to be, because you have the expectation that it should be the way you want it to be because that's the way it is in the United States or England. How dare you? Talk about lack of humanity, lack of human understanding. I mean, no respect whatsoever for other cultures. And that's what they live out of. And yet they think, for some reason, that they are respecting other cultures by going there and looking at them like they're in a zoo. I mean, it's a very corrupt mental thought process there that I have a hard time relating and understanding. And this is where I get very defensive and annoyed by what I was watching in the film, because of you would almost consider that this white family is the central piece to this entire, network narrative story. It's about what happens to them, and it's about what happens to their kids, right? And it's tragic. It's horrible what does happen to them. Being shot by a random bullet because two little boys in Moroccan country got a hold of a weapon that they had no business getting a hold of, and accidentally, which is truly an accident, shooting white people. You know, the attitude and the blatant disrespect for everything going on around. Yes, you're in a desperate situation. I understand all that, and I have compassion for what you are going through. But guess what? You brought all of the drama onto yourself as white people touring the zoos. You brought all of that on yourself, and yet you absolve yourself of any responsibility for what you created, the problems and troubles and attitudes that you created. It's really sad, and that's what I got annoyed about, especially with this particular film, Babel. And again, it's a character, but it is emblematic of how a lot of people operate in this world. That's why it's a good film. Anyways, not tell you the whole story and everything else, but you know, something tragic also happens with the white kids that were taken down to Mexico, right? And again, you know, I have a lot of criticism on, not on the Mexican people. They're beautiful people. Beautiful people, right? And beautiful families. But think about the American Wild West and how lawless it was and out west when they were, you know, expanding west and everything else. The lawlessness and the troubles and the lack of respect for fellow human beings and law and order. Right? Well, you're talking about a country, Mexico, that is underdeveloped, and it's the same kind of lawlessness that occurred for the early American history, right? A lot of lawlessness, a lot of lack of law and order among the people. Not to say that they're horrible people, not to say that they raise beautiful families, beautiful people. I'm not criticizing them as a people in the sense that they're bad people. But what they are, which may offend people, is they are low-class, lawless people who don't have a lot of structure and order in their societies. And without all of that structure and order, when we come from a society with lots of structure and order, the things and the decisions that they make can come off to a bunch of little children who are affluent and privileged in a completely law and ordered society. It's going to be a fish out of water. And that certainly was the case in this film. I mean, these kids go through a very tragic, eye-opening and scary situation by going across the border with this Mexican woman. But again, I don't think this Mexican woman had every desire to take these kids to the wedding. It was the responsibility of Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett to get back home in time because this lady was going to go to her wedding. They didn't get back in time. They went on about their vacation and, oh, we'll just let the nanny take care of the kids a little bit longer. To hell with whatever her plans were, right? Revolve around your society. You have a nanny, but she needs to drop everything she's doing because you guys decide to extend your trip, or you guys decide to go on a longer vacation, or you guys decide to make decisions that prolong your vacation. You know, again, it's a lack of consideration for anything else other than your own existence. And that's what's interesting about the film. So I say watch the film. It is a good film. It was released in 2006. I just recently watched the film, and like I said, it was very thought-provoking. Now that I had the time to sit down and evaluate it, it was very thought-provoking, and it invoked a lot of emotion out of me. And as I was able to dissect the film and everything else and declare it as a really good film, I was able to pick out the nuances that really disturbed me, which makes it a great film, because good films evoke emotions, and it certainly invoked emotions out of me. So check it out. It's called Babel. It's with Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett, released in 2006. It was a good film. Have a wonderful day. Do an act of kindness for your fellow human being.